Hey, this is Paul, and in this video we are going to be talking about 3 insights that will help you get the freedom and comfortability and authenticity that you have found with your music in the practice room onto a stage in front of an audience. This is something that has been a huge struggle for me, something that used to be absolutely incapacitating for me back in the day. My hands would just completely freeze up on the guitar. I wasn't able to play any kind of fingerstyle guitar in front of an audience and could barely strum the guitar. And my voice would tighten up, my memory would just go completely blank. Remembering lyrics was like my weakest of weak links. And it was just a miserable experience. I never had an experience where I actually enjoyed performing, where I actually enjoyed being up in front of people. And those experiences were relatively few and far between as a result of that. So in the past year, my life has been kind of reshuffled in some ways, and I have had the opportunity to take my music seriously and actually put in some real time and commit to finally getting over this hurdle of not enjoying performing. That's been the main goal, is to actually get on stage, be able to grab a guitar around a campfire or in a living room for an intimate kind of, hang out with friends type of situation and be able to play a song. And I am very pleased to say that I have crossed that threshold and have learned a tremendous amount along the way. So in the past 6 months, I've played more than a dozen shows. I should say open mics. I played one show. My first show was last week. It was a solo gig at a venue. It was a 3-hour show, and I had 30 songs that I prepared for those 3 hours, which for me was an incredible undertaking. And again, a tremendous learning experience. But it's looking like I'll be able to get a standing spot at this venue every month. There's another venue that I'm looking at where I'm hoping to be able to play every couple of weeks. And I'm in the process of getting a band together. I've been in conversation with a bass player and a lead guitar player. And so things are starting to come together. And so what I really want to impart to you in this video, though, are some key principles, some key insights, some very practical insights around bringing what you know that you have in the practice room across that threshold into, onto the hot seat, into the fire of a performance setting. So let's get into it. So the first key insight that I want to share with you is the fact that the most important thing in your performance is the feel rather than the skill. It's the state that is actually the most important piece of the puzzle. The skill is something that we tend to overcompensate for when we're finding ourselves struggling playing in front of people. We recognize that there's certain technical breakdowns. Our fingers aren't moving in the way that we want them to. Our voice is cracking at certain places. We're not able to hit certain notes. Our memory is failing. And so we believe that the solution to that is just more practice, that we just need to practice that particular section of the song more. We need to put more work into memorizing. We need to put in more time technically. When in fact, what's really interesting is that when you're in a state that is conducive to finding the feel of the song, to finding the heart and the soul of the song, the technical stuff that you've worked on kind of happens. It's the memory just works. The voice is able to find the note and the feel of the note that you're looking for. And so this is a real key insight, because it shifts the focus then from practicing more and just hunkering down and getting infinite reps in on a particular part of the song, which oftentimes, at least in my situation, was kind of anxiety ridden. It's like, I've got to do this, I've got to get it right, and so there's kind of this perfectionism that's baked into it. But with this light bulb moment for me, realizing that it's more about maintaining a state that is conducive to finding the feel of the song, which then allows for the rest of the stuff to kind of come into the functional performance. Functional being, you know, movement of your fingers, etc. That it just shifts the focus, it shifts the emphasis. And so this first piece of advice is really about just, first of all, recognizing that, and then recognizing certain aspects of that as you tap into it in the practice room. So first of all is recognizing that it just happens. There's nothing that when you find yourself in flow with a song that you're playing on your own, and you find yourself just kind of taken in by it, there's nothing that you necessarily did to make that happen. It was something that just kind of came alive. And so you found the feel found you. It was something that happened. The second thing to recognize is what I was mentioning just a minute ago, is that the technical pieces of that puzzle fall into place very naturally. So when you're in flow, when you're in that state, when you're in that relationship with the music where it's really kind of come alive, the memory works, the technical piece of your instrument works, your vocal stuff works, right? And so being able to connect those dots then will really help in terms of what we're going to be talking about in the third step, which is about actually transferring this onto the stage, into a performance setting. But this is the first piece of advice, is just recognizing state is actually more important than skill. And you know, if you pay attention, you know, what I have found is that even when you see, or as at a live performance, if you see somebody performing, or if you're listening to something that's incredible, it may very well and often has a technical component to it that is awe-inspiring, where you say, wow, that's incredible. I don't know how they can play something like that. But the special sauce, even in the midst of that technical proficiency, in my opinion, is the inspiration that's behind that technical capability. There's something inspired that has brought that technical precision into focus. There's something behind that is lifted and open in the heart and the soul of the performer as they're bringing that music to life. It's kind of invisible, but that's what I believe. You could have somebody who technically plays exactly the same kinds of notes, or plays the exact same notes, technically in the same rhythm, et cetera, technically with the same dynamics, that doesn't really capture that. So that's the first piece of this, is just recognizing it's more about the feel than it is about the skill. The second point that I would like to share with you is that skill is still very important, and that you've got to put in the time. If you're not putting in the time and you're not developing your competency with your instrument, then it's not going to withstand the weight of being in a performance setting. So you've got to put in the time. And what I have found is roughly about 2 hours per day is kind of the sweet spot. Maybe an hour on some days, oftentimes more, but certainly 5-6 days a week. You want to be getting in a couple of hours, at least at the level that I'm at, where I'm trying to level up. I'm, trying to get to the place where I can get on stage and people will want to come and see the show. The people, besides just my friends, that people will say, hey, I want to go listen to this. I see this guy's got a show going on, or he's playing this particular night. And so there's a certain level of competence that actually requires that you put in the time. So feel and state are more fundamental than skill, in my opinion, but skill is absolutely critical. And another piece of this that I think is really important is just the decision-making process in terms of choosing the music that you play. Especially in the beginning, you want to play music that you feel really comfortable with. because again, it's a completely different animal being on stage. And so you want to have as much, especially things that you've been playing for a really long time. If you're just getting started with open mics, for example, you want to have something that your muscle memory can really kind of take a lot of the weight of that and carry you through, because your presence to what you're playing is going to be completely shaken when you get up on stage. So you want to have something that you know really well. If you're learning new pieces, I would recommend that you recalibrate your sensibilities around what is a piece that you can, feel comfortable playing to, maybe where you were a year or two ago, rather than where you are now relative to playing on your own in a comfortable situation. You want to really choose pieces that are going to be accessible to you when you get on stage. All right, so we've got our paradigm shift, our shift in perspective around feel and state being more fundamentally important than skill. We also recognize that skill is incredibly important. We got to be putting in the time consistently. We'll be talking about the how of practice elsewhere. That's a very important piece of this, because you can be spending your 2 hours a day just going through material that you already know, glossing over tricky spots and that kind of stuff, and it's kind of worthless with respect to advancing your ability level. So we'll be talking about different strategies down the line on this channel. Now it's time to be thinking about getting on stage. And the third piece of advice is to manage expectations. So for me, what I've found is that in the practice room, what I'm trying to do is get to what I would say is like a minimum of a B+ level of playing, relative to just my own intuition, my own kind of internal sense of whatever that means, whatever B+ means for me. And so if I'm consistently, and again, this is performance practice, we'll be talking about the difference between performance practice and isolated spot practice down the line. But if I'm able to recall something from memory, first time through, and I'm able to say, yeah, it was good, or I'm able to get something in the A game where it's like, this actually sounded really good, like I feel really good about this. What I can expect, I have found, when I get in front of an audience is about a C level performance, right? This is really important, because if you expect that you're going to be able to recreate what you did in the practice room when you get in front of stage, in front of people on stage, in this phase that I'm in right now, where I'm still kind of getting comfortable being on stage, it's going to be a very upsetting experience. So you've got to manage your expectations. If you can perform at a level when you go back and review, and we'll be talking about this elsewhere as well, recording and reviewing your performances, even just reflecting back if you haven't recorded it, if you can play at a C level, something that you've been putting your heart and soul into, you got to feel good about that, right? That's a win. The other thing that I would say has really been important for me is to be very specific about how you critique yourself. So if in your practice you're practicing specific things, which you should be doing, you've isolated certain aspects or elements of the song that you're working on. It could be something like keeping a particular rhythm, right? Let's just use that as an example. So let's say you have a tendency to rush a particular piece. And so you've been putting time into just getting the feel of a particular rhythm. And so then you get on stage, if you find that you're able to maintain that rhythm, even if you made 18 mistakes in the song, if you were able to employ the thing, deliver on the thing that you put the time in, that specific thing, that's a win. And that's something that should be recognized and celebrated. Likewise, if you fail to deliver on something that you've been putting a lot of time into, that is information. And the information could be that there's more work to be done on that particular weak spot, and leaning into that to some degree is certainly not a bad idea. But it's also important to take a step back and look at that particular period of time in the performance. How was your state? Were you connected? Were you able to maintain a state where you were finding flow to at least to some degree? And if the answer is absolutely no, then the information that you didn't deliver on this thing that you've been working on may not necessarily be that you need to put more time into that, right? It may be more about this idea of being able to maintain the state that is then conducive to bring those skills into the limelight. So these are questions that you just have to grapple with as you move along. And so it's really important as you first start getting on stage to give yourself a lot of grace, have a lot of self-acceptance, recognize that when you make mistakes, not if, but when you make mistakes, that being able to handle that with grace and sometimes with humor, but certainly a lightheartedness where you're not taking yourself so seriously. It gives other people, especially if you're in an open mic kind of situation, you're in a group of other musicians who are in the same or a similar boat, you're giving them permission to be able to fail as well, because it's that experience of getting up and failing and then getting back up again, that's really kind of what it's all about. So really, I would really recommend that you spend some time managing your expectations. If you're nailing it in the practice room, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to translate. But the main point that I really want to emphasize here is we're talking about expectations. Because we've been talking about making mistakes, we've been talking about accepting those mistakes, having grace with ourselves and so forth. The key here is also to be on the lookout for those moments in the performance where you were able to find that state, where you were able to find that connection to the piece, where you really felt like you were connected and delivering that connection and that authenticity to the audience. Even if it happens just for a moment. This is so important because in the beginning, for me, my first couple of open mics, I barely got little glimpses in those performances. But I knew already at that point how important it was. And for me, because I had never even had a glimpse of that before. I was so incapacitated previously that there was zero, not even close to a shred of, hey, that was fun. Or, oh, that was so cool, that one spot, yeah, we really nailed that or whatever. There was just none of that. So for me, having that as, the kind of the contrast, being able to recognize that when I'm up there, loving the music as much as I do, and being able to feel when that love for that music connected, and then to feel when everything kind of came together, and then to get the sense and the feel and the feedback that it's connecting with other people, that's the stuff right there. And so to be able to recognize that, no matter how many times you messed up, no matter what the mistakes were, no matter how you would grade the performance, even if it's a C- level performance, if you were able to tap into that experience on stage, you have proven to yourself that you can do it. You have proven to yourself that it's possible to be in an authentic place where you are, bringing the music as it deserves to be brought, as it's wanting to be expressed in you. And that's what it's all about, because if you can do it even, in few and far between places in the beginning, that over time you will be able to increase how long those periods of time last, the frequency of how many times those times are going to reveal themselves to you, and you'll be able to take advantage of them on stage. So this is very much like there's a saying in the tech world. So I think it came from a fiction book it's kind of a futuristic book on, kind of a techno future world. And the phrase, which you may have heard, is that the future is already here, it just isn't evenly distributed. So the ideal that you have in your mind about how you want to be when you get up on stage, if you have these glimpses, if you have these moments on stage where you're able to tap into that, you've already got it. It's already here. Like, you already can perform. it just isn't evenly distributed. I would even say if you're able to find it in the practice room, if you haven't gotten on stage yet and been able to find it on stage, if you're finding that in the practice room and you have that love for the song that is, just intoxicating. You get done playing it and you're like, God, I just love that song, right? You're already there. It just hasn't been distributed evenly yet throughout the rest of your musical context, which includes being on stage, which as you get the courage and the confidence to start getting on stage, get the glimpses turn into moments, the moments turn into minutes, the minutes turn into songs, then before long you are hooked. And it becomes something that you are actually enjoying and looking forward to doing. There's always the nerves, there's always some anxiety and trepidation, but it's a nervous but excited type of thing. So it's really important to reflect on this, right? It's from a technical aspect, from a learning perspective, a learning optimization perspective, you gotta get feedback on the mistakes, right? That's important. You gotta look at where things went wrong and try to assess what it was all about, and then try to figure out how to move forward with that, how to best approach working with those mistakes, especially if there's patterns of those mistakes. But it's so important to also recognize the importance of the state and the feel piece of this, and to really reflect when you're looking back on your performances, to not just get obsessed with where everything went wrong and like, oh my God, so often I'd feel so embarrassed. I get done and it was just there's just this like kind of cringe feeling, because it's just like, oh my God, it was so awful. Like I did this thing and then I forgot this lyric and then I just had to unplug the song halfway through because I couldn't even remember how to get my hands to do what they were supposed to do, right? But even in situations like that, or I would say especially in situations like that, if there was a moment where you had the feel, you got to bring that into focus. And there's a teaching story, I think it's from the Cherokee Indians, about a grandfather who is involved, he's shepherding his grandson through a rite of passage. And he's telling this traditional story to his grandson about two wolves that are at war in every person's chest. And he goes on to describe in all kinds of detail all of these epic battles and this confrontation, this age-old battle between the white wolf and the black wolf in every person's heart. And the grandfather pauses for a moment and the grandson says, but grandfather, which wolf will win? And the grandfather says, whichever wolf you feed. And I think this is really, really key, because if we spend the time feeding the white wolf, if we spend the time bringing our awareness into those moments, they will grow. It's like putting a grow light on a little seedling. So watering the seedling and nurturing it, putting some plant fertilizer in the soil. Those are the things that are going to nurture the things that we want to grow. So bringing our attention, bringing our memory, and remembering and relishing, just recognizing that these moments happened, that is what it's all about, And so, final piece of advice, feed the white wolf, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.